Hey everyone, this is the second video in our series on installing a gas system into your van. In the last video we went over what you'll need in your system. Today we're actually going to be installing everything, from working out where we'll mount the tank to connecting it to your appliance. We've broken it down into 11 steps. We are going to be working underneath the van a lot today, so what we're going to do is drive the van onto some pieces of wood here that'll raise the van up and give us a bit more working area. So now we have the van raised, let's go underneath and see where we can fit a tank. So this is the exhaust right here, so we wouldn't want to put an LPG tank on this side. We could put it on this side here, there's a little bit of room, but our wastewater tank is there. For us, the only option is to put it where the spare wheel is. I've already taken it out and there's plenty of room here. I've measured between the two chassis rails, that's 830 millimeters, and the spare wheel that was in it came down about 280 millimeters. So we've bought a tank that's 809 millimeters by 230, so that'll easily fit between the two chassis rails and it won't drop any further than the spare tire originally did. Another thing you have to think about is what's on the inside of this piece of metal. For us it's just a bed there, so we can easily drill up through that and put a bolt through it. But if that's in the middle of your living area or something, that's something to also think about. The tank comes painted red, but you need to paint it with a rubberized underbody sealant to protect it. So this is the underside of the tank. It has these 4 feet with nuts that have been welded onto the bottom. What we need to do is to drill these holes so we can put bolts in from inside the camper van to do the tank up to secure it. Lifting this tank underneath the van is quite heavy and awkward with having it on your chest, trying to mark out the holes. So what I've done is cut a piece of cardboard to the same outside size as the tank, and we're going to punch through little holes for the 4 feet, and that way underneath the van all we need to do is to lift this up into place, work out where we want it, and then mark the holes that way. So now we're back underneath the van and we can just put our little template in the middle of the two beams, leave a bit of room up the front, so then there's a bit of room there, and that looks good. I'll just mark the holes. And now we have our 4 marks on where we have to drill for our tank. We'll drill up from here and then we'll put the bolts in through the top. This will be drilling up through our bed, so I'll drill really slowly and just try and get the head through a little bit so then I can see exactly on the inside where it's going to go through. I've measured it and I think we might be clear, but I'll go slow just to double check. It just started hailing, or kind of in between hail and snow. So now I'm going to drill the first hole. Oh my god, it's hailing heaps! This is crazy.
Oh, was that lightning?
That is so much hail. And inside the camper van, we just came up through that little piece of board there. So that looks alright. We might have to cut away this board to make sure that the bolt sits flush on it. So the first hole went well, let's do the other 4. So now after about an hour we've chiseled away enough room so then the bolts can go through and we can spin them easily. And we can drop the other one in. And the same thing on the other side. So now all the bolts go through the floor of the van. Now we just need to put the tank underneath and then turn the bolts and do them up. So now we have the tank out, now I need to lift that into place underneath the van. This is definitely a 2-person job unless you can find a box or something to rest the tank on while you go on the inside and tighten the bolts up from there. Nice. So that's all secure from the top. That is nice and secure, it's not going anywhere. On the top we have a large bolt running through it with a large penny washer on. In the kit there's also these smaller washers and nylon nuts. So what we're going to do is put these on the underneath side, and that way the nylon nut will stop it from ever vibrating loose. The next step we're going to do is install the fill point. This is the point in which the pump at the gas station will attach to your van. This fill point gets installed inside of this housing, which has 2 parts. One side goes in from the inside, and on this side here is what you see on the outside. For these holes you need to get a 70mm hole saw, and we'll drill in through this from the outside of the van, and it's just big enough for the backing of this housing to go through the hole. And on the other side of the panel we're going to drill a 86mm hole saw size, which is just big enough to fit the backing plate in which the front housing screws and attaches We'll be drilling it in this back lower part of the van, as that way this part is below the floor level inside the van, so if anything does leak at this fill point, and when you fill up the van, if some overspray happens, it will all drop down underneath the vehicle and it won't be able to get inside. I've put some tape on the van to mark out where I want to drill and where I definitely don't want to drill into the van. Underneath the van here there is a suspension mount that comes up here, so I definitely don't want to drill in this part here, so I put a little X there. The inside there's a panel that starts at this point, so I don't want to go above this point, and the wheel arch actually ends here, so that gives me this area here that I want to drill my hole in. I want to drill as far away from the suspension mount as possible, so I'll be drilling my hole here. And I also want to be drilling as far away from the door as possible. I believe it's 500mm from the fill point to any openings in your van. So let's get going and drill some big holes in the side of the van. We got it out. I'll just do a quick run around with the file to take off any sharp edges. And now our back piece can go through the hole. So now we have our hole in the front drilled and a hole in the back drilled. The hole in the front is for the front cap, which you can put through nicely. It's a bit tight, but it fits in nicely. And then we have a back cap which can fit through the back hole but can't fit through the front hole. This is what's going to sandwich together and hold everything in place. I did have to file two flat points at the top and bottom. These are for two little tabs here to stop the cap from being able to rotate. When we install it, we'll want the little dangly hose bit that holds the front cap on to be at the very bottom, so that way it doesn't get in the way when you're putting the nozzle in to refill. And in the UK they have these two pins here for the adapters to go onto, and they go side by side, not top and bottom, they go side to side. So that goes in like that, like so. Then you have this little plate that goes on the back with thread on it, and we'll install some countersunk bolts in from the front and then screw this all together to mount the filler point to the filler point housing. Cool, so now those two are mounted together, and because it is quite tight in here and it's hard to get your hands into, I'm going to attach the filler hose to it now and then tighten it up nice and tight out here where I can easily get to it. Cool, so now that's nice and tight, and you can even pop the cap on and it looks so nice. Try and get the brand name the right way up as well. You don't want to get it sideways or upside down. So that's the way we want to put it. So we'll just feed the hose through the hole. The back black housing we will now feed through the hose and then right up against the back plate of the housing. It has 6 screws that go through and screw from the back side into the white bit, and that'll clamp them together. We'll also put some Sikaflex or like some kind of joining compound. This is 512 Caravan sealant. It's been really good. We've drilled lots of holes and stuff for the van and none of them have leaked so far, so it's been really good. So we'll put that around the front side here and then squeeze it into place, and that should make it waterproof. And we have also painted both the holes to ensure that no rust happens in those areas. So there's not much I can show you from this side. You can see the black cap's in there, the white hose isn't there, but we still have to clamp them together. But there's 6 screws on the back of the black housing that will screw into the white one and clamp it close, and the Sikaflex is going to seal it, and then that'll be nice and good. Here's a pro tip I've just learnt. I put a little bit of Sikaflex on the head of the bolt and then put it onto the socket as I'm having to drill slightly downhill, so it stops the screw from falling off the socket. We still have to tidy up the Sikaflex, but as you can see, turn it, pops out, you can attach your nozzle, and it's all in there, it's all very secure. So now underneath the van we have the fill hose coming in from the fill point. I've cable tied this in place, running underneath the van. This will be different van to van or where you're actually installing it, but now we have to attach the fill point to the tank, and that just simply screws onto the thread there. The tank also came with these rubber covers to go over top of the fill and exit points where it comes out of the tank, and there's some worm clips to do it to make it nice and tight. Awesome. And so that's the filling part of the system done. We've got the fill point on the outside and the fill hose running to the tank, and then all installed. So now it's time to start with the gas output side of the tank. I'm going to start off by mounting the gas regulator and then working out how long the hoses need to be to run to the regulator. To mount the regulator, there isn't a lot of different options I have down here. There's a lot of bumps and stuff, and so I can't mount it on close to this. So I think the best place for me to mount it is here. I can run output from the tank into this part here, which is the input of the regulator. You know which one's the input because there's a little arrow. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's an arrow pointing on the side of the regulator, which means that this is the input and then the gas will come out this way. So we're going to be mounting it here. Gas will come out from the tank into the regulator, and then it'll come out here, and then it'll come out here and down the chassis rail to where we need it. Those holes are already pre-drilled, so that's how that looked easy. So now I have the copper pigtail, and I'm going to install that onto the tank and then try and work out what length I need to run to the regulator and put a mark on that, and then we'll cut the tube to that length. So now I'm going to show you how to cut this 8mm tubing. It's got this rubber coating on it because it's going underneath the van, and that should stop any small rocks from hitting the copper and damaging it. So there's my mark here. I'm just going to run a standing knife around that mark, and then I'm going to do another cut about 2 centimeters either side of that cut. And now we're just going to put a slit down the bottom, and then we can peel off the rubber and get to the actual copper. I have this little tube cutter. I haven't used one before, but these work amazingly great. They give really good cuts, really easy and really clean. Amazing. Definitely get one of these. All you do is pop it over the tube like so, and then rotate in the direction that it says to rotate it in. Rotate it about 5 times, maybe a little more. It's been like 12 times. Yeah. Rotate it 12 times, it pops off, and that's your cut. It's nice and flush, not too sharp though. Yeah, it's really nice. So where our oven is inside the van is about here, just in between our wastewater tank and our fuel tank. We have our LPG line that comes down from there. It goes across the chassis rail there, and then it comes all the way down to the back of the tank. And then those hoses keep running until they get to the tank. From the LPG tank right up to the on-off switch next to the appliance is all actually in one piece. It's probably about 4.5 meters of copper tube without a joint in it. The trick I thought to do it was to feed the tube through until you get to like the halfway point, and then it's still straight from then, and then work each side from that middle point to try and bend it up. It takes quite a while. The tube's kind of easy to bend, but it has limitations. Getting it through chassis rails with quite tight bends is quite hard and takes a long time. It probably took me about an hour just feeding the tube through everywhere, but you can slowly get it, bend it. You can straighten it up if you do a bend the wrong way as well, and you can get it all the way to your LPG tank. The less joins in the tube, the better, because then there's less places that the gas can leak. Every 500ml you're meant to have one of these clamps here. It's a rubberized clamp that just holds the 8mm copper tube in place, just then it can't move around anywhere. 8mm tube in it, bend it over, put a self-tapping, self-drilling screw in it, and then you just screw that up and then hold the copper tube in place. So now we're going to make the cut to go into the regulator here. I found a good trick is to have a nice straight bit of tube here. Put the nut on and then this little olive on. Nut first, then the olive, and the nut will squeeze that olive and then make a nice airtight joint. So that is hand tight. Everything else is all hand tighten in place, and that looks good. Everything's secure, nothing's hanging too low, nothing will get caught. I might just bend this up a little bit just to give it some more clearance, but other than that everything looks fine. One thing also on the regulator is this point here that's blanked off is actually a test point, and so when we go to get the gas tested, the gas engineer will attach his little device or something to this point here, and that'll be able to tell if there's any leaks from the out point. So now with an adjustable crescent, we're just going to tighten it all up. And now that's all the connections tightened up, and that's the gas pipe system of this install done. Now just to install the wiring for the solenoid, there are two sets of wires coming from the tank. The green and black one comes from the fuel sender unit. If you have an auxiliary fuel gauge level device that you want to install inside your van, so that way you can know how full the tank is from inside the van and not have to come down and check this little gauge here, run another wire up into the van and then connect that to your gauge there, and then that'll tell you how full your tank is. We didn't opt for that option, so what we're going to do is just bundle these wires up and make them go nowhere. The other wires, this red and black wire coming from the tank, comes from the solenoid, and this is an electronic shut-off valve, so when you apply voltage to these terminals, it will turn the shut-off valve on and then gas will flow through. And that way on the inside of the van, when you finish cooking, you can turn the switch off and that'll shut this off, meaning that no gas can get outside of the tank. To join the wires together, I'm just going to use these little spade, and this one's called a spade, I'm not sure what this one is, but on the wiring in there they've got a smaller type that I haven't seen before, so what we're going to do is cut off their terminals and then use these terminals that you get from Halfords, Bunnings, wherever you buy your electrical parts from, just the general size. What I'm going to do is where I attach the wires, I'm going to do inside this case here, so then they get a little bit less wet and hopefully they should last longer and be a bit more protected. So now Hannah's inside the van at the switch, and she's going to switch it on and off a couple of times, just then we can see if we can hear the solenoid opening and shutting, and that'll tell us if that's working. And then off, on, awesome. So I can hear it turning on and off, but it's quite loud underneath here, but that's a really good sign. So the solenoid is working. Now to put this cover on, and then that's really basically done. Time to fill up with gas and see if it all works. Awesome, I am very pleased that this job is done, because I'm looking forward to pizza and roast dinners on Sundays and all the joys of having an oven and 3 hobs. So now we're inside the van. The oven will go slightly above here, and this is the cabinet that the oven will be sitting on, and we have 3 holes down here. The first one is the electronics for the tank solenoid to open and close. The second one is the 8mm copper tube for the oven, and the third one is a ventilation hole which our oven specified that we needed, and these will all be covered over by a cover that we have here and here to protect the wiring away and to make it look a bit nicer as well. So now we have our oven and drawers all put back into place, and now on the back of the oven to hook up the LPG line, I have already pre-cut it here, and this is the line that goes into the oven that already was on it. So what we need to do is to install this isolating valve in the middle, in between it, and that'll poke out the cabinet a little bit, so then on this side of the cabinet you'll be able to turn it on and off, and that will isolate the gas to the appliance. For every appliance you have to have a isolating valve for each appliance. For the oven, all it is to hook up a positive and negative to it, and at the very back of the cabinet there's this slot here, which if for any LPG that isn't burnt, it'll sink to the bottom and then flow down there and then down through the cabinet and out underneath the vehicle through the drain hole at the bottom. Now it's installed, it's time to fill up with LPG. We're big believers in DIY, but gas can be lethal, so only attempt this install if you feel comfortable, and no matter what, get it signed off by a gas engineer. We did it! Everything's installed and we've put gas into the system. It's now time for the most important step, getting it signed off by a gas engineer. Oh, let there be fire. Oh, it's a lot of heat. No matter how careful you were or how good of a job you think you did, make sure you get it signed off by a gas engineer. We now have peace of mind that we're safe, and our inspector told us exactly how to vent our van when we're cooking. Now for the second most important step, baking cookies.
Thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe.